when we validate the model, we map all the radiologists, all the users, in order to know which ones have a better experience with a new version of the model versus a worse experience. And then we look at all the ones that have a worse experience, and we go and investigate why and modify the model so that everybody has a better experience.
The following is a conversation with J-O Racine, Chief Technology Officer at Rad AI. J-O is most well known for his decades of experience in building innovative technology products, as well as leading large enterprise organizations and teams. I am so excited to speak with him today about his thoughts on leadership, technology, and the future of AI. Dear listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and please join us in imagining the future. J-O, welcome to the Imagining the Future podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Many people know you as a technology titan, and that's someone that's really worked in the industry for so many years and has really touched every aspect of the technology boom over the last, I guess, more than a decade. Let's start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Well, I don't know if I'm a titan, but I'll take the compliment, I guess. Thank you, Sai. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I have a bit of an unorthodox path in the sense that I'd say I saw early on that I wanted to be in healthcare and have an impact on the world. I was hesitating between space exploration and healthcare. Actually, two key topics nowadays. So I guess I was lucky, but for me, it was the future. So ended up in healthcare, studied in that, and then interested by many things, and went into stock exchanges and did some time with consumer products when I joined Amazon and tablets and Fire TV, and then as age grows on you, you go back to wait what were my goals again, and so it kind of slowly creeped my way back into the healthcare space through first health and wellness with Amazon's Halo wearable, and then health AI, and then Outset Medical as a CTO there in the dialysis space, and now in radiology with Rad AI. So kind of a whole path. You lose a bit the road, and you kind of find back the path as you come back, as most people do, I think, when they travel through life, because it always looks like it was a planned journey when you look back on it. Really, when you live it, every moment is a bit kind of an ad hoc decision based on a bunch of circumstances that are a mix of opportunities, of decisions, of luck. So that's kind of been my journey.
That's amazing. And I think it's a true testament to kind of your perseverance over the years, especially as technology has gone through so many ups and downs. It's interesting. You spoke a little bit about your work at Amazon and AWS. I know now, obviously, you lead Rad AI as the Chief Technology Officer, but really you have so much experience leading large technology organizations and teams at AWS and Amazon. And I think worked on everything from Fire Tablet to Alexa to health, like you mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit about what was that environment like, especially leading an organizations and products in something as wide and expansive as Amazon and the AWS environment?
Yes, it was extremely rewarding, but incredibly challenging. These are not easy years. They were challenging at every turn. I think a big growth. I've lived through both been an engineer and a manager and a leader at Amazon. And what really permeated through it all was a sense of dedication, and a dedication to the values of Amazon. I think where old Amazon was, I think it might be not as true now, but where old school Amazon was really imbued by these leadership principles through and through, and by a sense of well, one of the sayings at the time was work hard, have fun, make history, right? And so a lot of the journey there felt like that. It was a lot of hard work, some pockets of a lot of fun, and the impressions that we were making history in a lot of times. Right? And sometimes it's small history, it's consumer product history, right? In a lot of ways, it's not as impactful that you have in health, but you are, you think of some of the products out there, the e-reader, the tablets at the time, but 100 like $99 tablet when it came out. The Fire TV with voice search was revolutionary at the time. So there was a lot of kind of firsts that made it an exceptional experience. I've been surrounded by both exceptional leaders that have taught me a lot and absolutely horrendous leaders that have taught me even more.
That's
And
incredible.
so, yeah, it was, you talk about ups and downs. Amazon was a lot of ups and downs. Right? They were very dark moment where it was really hard to power through, and others where the achievements, the long-term achievements you've been working on for months, for years, kind of finally pay off, and you see your area or your product or your features or whatever succeed. And so there's a little bit of both, right? And so I think that's part of the learning and how you grow as a leader in an
Yeah.
organization like that.
It is amazing to me that you had an opportunity to touch some of the most influential products. I know from a leadership perspective, there's probably a lot of learning, but I'm sure from a product and developing out, now I think it's become pretty common and mainstay that Amazon develops, great products. But back then it was pretty blue sky, especially when you talk about the Fire tablet and all these pretty cutting edge things. It was creating an industry for itself. What was it like to develop some of the most influential products of our generation at a time when it was all relatively blue sky?
Yeah, we often make it sound like we knew it would work, right? That is not how it works when you're in it. You just try to participate and make it as best as you can as a product. I was not one of the leaders on tablets really, but I was one of the contributors. It was exciting to see the reception on the marketplace and the marketplace of it. But day to day, it's the same work that you have to do throughout your career. It's about working hard, being dedicated, having great teammates, building a great team when you have the opportunity, and really developing a sense of what's necessary out there and how do you follow the values of the company or at least of the marketplace. And I think that was what was was extraordinary with Amazon is there were clear guidelines, which were the leadership principles that allowed you to have some direction as to how you should operate and always be customer obsessed was actually overwhelmingly present throughout at least the first, I'd say, 7 to 8 years of my journey there. And so there really it's after the fact that you realize that it was a game-changing product in a lot of ways. You see it when you release it. I was it was secret when I was on Fire TV. We released it, but all the hard work to actually make the product successful happens well after it is released. It's by all the small decisions you take on a daily basis to build the features, to build a better product, to distribute it internationally. And I think, when I remember when Fire TV was first released, I think we had sold, you know, don't quote me on those numbers, but something like 100,000 devices. By the time I had left, I think we had 80 million devices active. It's a journey to get through, right? You don't wake up at 100,000 and say, yes, we have a successful product. For Amazon, it's not a huge amount of devices, but when you go to something like the 80 million, now you're working on an impactful product, even though it's a consumer one. And then that's really where going back to kind of coming back to an earlier part of our conversation where I realized, well, I can have that impact on 80 million, on a big contributor with a lot of other people on 80 million devices. What if these devices were actually helping patients or going back to those roots and kind of started pivoting back to health?
Yeah. I really like that arc of finding impact. And of course, healthcare, I think definitionally, when you're creating product in healthcare, the goal is to ultimately impact patient lives and improve um, medicine in a way that improves patient outcomes. Uh, now we're really lucky to have you as kind of our, leading our entire tech ecosystem at Rad AI as chief technology officer. What do you feel like was, the biggest shift you had to go from consumer products into the healthcare space? Because, obviously a different stakeholder, different ideology, but also would love to hear your perspectives on shifting from Amazon and then coming to Rad AI, like a startup purely focused on healthcare.
Yeah, I'd say two things. One is the in the consumer product, it's normal and expected that you can set the tone. You can create a brand new API and say, "Hey, this is our new standard. Adopt it." And you can you can really set the tone and advance the technology any way you want. In healthcare, it's a lot more making do with available technologies, right? I always to remind myself, HL7, which is the ubiquitous connectivity standard, and I'm putting big air quotes there, is came out before the Berlin Wall fell. That just to give like an idea of the data technology that you have to work with, but it's so inserted throughout the very complex ecosystem of third party companies, none of which are kind of centralized, where there's so much decentralization in healthcare with all the health systems and the providers on one side, and then all the insurance, and then the more government driven standards and et cetera, that there's no easy way to just upgrade to Fire, which is already, I don't know, 10, 15 years old. The new
Yeah.
modern standard is 10, 15 years old, which is crazy old in technology, in technology terms. So I think that was one of the big difference. And you often see that mistake, I think, from startup coming in, and instead of having HL7, they'll say, "Oh, we'll just have our own awesome API, or we'll just do it all Fire from the outset at the API level, and because it's the future, right?" But yeah, it's been the future for 20 years. So, it's still the future. And
Yeah.
you shouldn't try to just build the future. You need products that are used now. I think that's the first key distinction. Another one is, we used to say regularly when there was a big outage and you caused a big outage, or with your team at Amazon, whether it was on AWS or elsewhere, you know what? We're not we're not saving lives here. If the service is down for half an hour, it sucks. It's money out the door, but nobody's dying. It's very different in healthcare. Actually, it was a big realization, when we had our first uh, incident at Outset, and it ended up not being Outset's fault at all. But we get this MDR, and there's a patient death, and you realize that the software might have contributed, and there's a whole thing, and you start investigating whether you contributed to it or not, and whether it's your fault. And it's a very different mindset when you start looking at that with that lens, and the finding the root cause, and putting a fix out. All these steps are very different because of the impact that they have, and you're very much more thoughtful about how you approach it because you don't want to get it wrong. it's a little less like that at Red AI with the fact that we're not a regulated product and we're not directly working on patients' lives, but it's still we're very thoughtful about the impact that we could have on patients or on providers, so that we don't make their lives or make them have take back decisions or make their life miserable. These are important considerations in the way that is very different when you're doing consumer products. So there's a sense of impact that includes a sense of responsibility that I think is not as strong for consumer product.
Yeah. I think that responsibility is such an interesting word and such a key word. Radiology um, is the main focus of obviously Rad AI. And it's interesting because, radiology is probably one of the most important fields in medicine today. Studies continue to indicate that imaging has increased exponentially over the last decade. Physicians are increasingly relying on imaging to help, and especially as the imaging has gotten better, it helps dictate course of treatment, follow up, diagnostics, and it's such a central fulcrum. So that sense of responsibility is so high in a product that you're contributing, that is being used as a very, very central part of medicine day in and day out by radiologists all over the country. How do you think about um, the technical hurdles and as someone that's leading the technology organization and creating this product and these sets of products, what are kind of your approaches that you take? Because obviously it's radiology data is really complex, especially when you're bringing in AI. Uh, how do you kind of think about that, and how do you approach that when you run your teams and products?
On that front, it's relatively the same when it comes to managing the data, in the sense that you want to be really careful of the rights that you have on the data with each of the provider that or provider here, data providers, not necessarily healthcare providers, but the different customers, right? That are providing you some data for training, et cetera. You want to be thoughtful of what are the rights you have. Can you use them for this or for that? So there's these aspects that are really important and that we keep in mind as we go. There's but I think for me, it's when the data is used for AI, and we just published our AI policy, our AI practice policy. You really see the impact of which data you use on the quality of the AI, and how what it means in terms of the accuracy of the algorithms. And so that, I think, is where it's different. It goes back to what we were talking about, and that sense of responsibility. There's a commercial responsibility of the rights that are important, and that's no different than in other areas. And then there's the accuracy, or the impact of the data on the accuracy or on what you do, that is that much more impactful, because inaccurate information is way more impactful again. I know I'm abusing the word maybe, but it really transforms what it means to make a mistake, right? And so, really being mindful about that, and so what we have that maybe we wouldn't have for like a recommendation system for movies, or that you don't need for a lot of other use cases, is very stringent validation that we don't do mistakes, that it has the impact that we expected it to have, that it gives the results we expected it to give, and that it's representative, right, of the population that's being taken care of. We're lucky in the sense that in radiology, it touches everybody. So, and particularly since our current technologies is mostly on the text, on the actual reports, we we accumulated, I think it's something like 500 million different reports. That's enough to be very representative of any sort of group in any sort of condition almost. And so that is really helpful for our models, and that really makes them powerful and accurate. And I think that's both the goal, in the sense that all the companies that do AI want to have that much more data, but it's also a responsibility, because more data gives you the accuracy, right? And so it's not just kind of data hoarding and creating an empire of data. It's because it's how you actually do a good job as in the healthcare space using
Yeah,
AI.
that makes a lot of sense. I guess for the sake of our listeners, like zooming out a little bit, what do you feel like is the most some of the most important things that you're building at Rad AI, and what do you think is kind of the future, or where do you kind of set your own guardrails for what's ahead and how you're focusing on your goals for the years ahead?
Yeah, I think for us, one of the competencies we've developed, and I think we're going to want to, and we want to keep having more generally is a sense of personalization and high touch. There's only what 50,000 radiologists in the U.S. and 100,000 in the world, something like that, right around those numbers. This is a pretty finite number of users. And so treating them like consumer products, where you often have 100 million, 200 million, a billion consumers, is very different. So we're really thinking about having a high touch, personalized experience. Our first product, the impressions product, is personalized to each radiologist. And when we validate the model, we map all the radiologists, all the users, in order to know which ones have a better experience with a new version of the model versus a worse experience. And then we look at all the ones that have a worse experience, and we go and investigate why and modify the model so that everybody has a better experience. These type of things, I think, are competencies that we can bring in other areas of our work, well outside impressions, and really make products that have this radiologist in mind, so that they're at the peak of their performance at all time, that they benefit from our products. Along the way, there's challenges. There's challenges in that you don't wake up one morning and your products work for every radiologist. Every new product works magically, but we have that expertise that allows us to bring that over time and make sure that our products work great for every radiologist. And I think applying that will really provide a framework for the success of Rad AI in a way that is beyond just, yeah, we're going to have great products. It's really thoughtful part of our strengths as a company, I think.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, this idea of customer obsession. I think, the Rad AI's motto has always been built by radiologists for radiologists. And that's a big reason why there's so many, the company uses so many radiologists on the team to develop these products and think about how it very seamlessly inserts into workflow. And I think what you're saying in terms of personalization is also so important because, as we talked about, there's only a finite number of radiologists. Image use is going up. Workflows are overburdened, and the daily practice of medicine for a radiologist with read volumes has gotten very, very challenging. So anything you can do to really think about the person that's using the product is so important. Do you feel like, the next 5 to 10 years, where do you feel like the AI and radiology intersection will go, and how are you thinking about that for yourself in terms of the product space, and what do you predict is kind of happening in the space in the next decade?
Yeah, I predictions are dangerous, but I'll 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 call
Humor
it an
me.
educated guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll call it an educated
Humor me.
guess. We'll see where that goes. A lot of the keywords around AI right now, whether it be in healthcare or otherwise, turnaround, replacing. It's replacing developers. It's going to replace radiologists. It's going to replace everything. I don't buy it personally. Generally, I don't buy the replace story. At the edges, don't get me wrong. Like, some people might not. There might be some areas where there's maybe a bit less developers or a bit less this or that because of it, but it's not because they've been replaced per se. It's because the um, the humans behind it are getting augmented, and it's no different than when computers came about and we said, the the all of these jobs are going to disappear. Some of them did. There's no more. Nobody's typing your memos anymore. You type them yourself.
Stenographers. Yeah.
But it did not create a big shortage of work because all of a sudden everybody typed themselves. Now it freed up for more productive work, and now everybody uses a computer. Everybody types their own stuff, and there's that increase in productivity that then resulted in more jobs created elsewhere. It frees up people for other things. Obviously, some people benefit others more than others. But then when you map that to radiology, well, you look at how we're still waiting for the human drivers to be replaced for the most part. There's Waymo. Middle Waymo is the is, is the odd one out, but it's very restrained to certain markets, but we're quite far away from that environment, even for drivers. Now, you don't need a high school to drive a car. Radiologists do this very specialized work that require a lot of judgment. They often see cases that are a one-time thing. They're just a one-time thing in their careers, but they're just a little similar to this and that they're able to do a diagnostic that, is a once in a career diagnostic, or maybe 5 times in a career, where data is not there in a way that AI is just gonna use it and come up with magical diagnostic. So I think that really the AI movement is going to go towards the same thing as always, which is human interfaces. For me, human interfaces is where it's at. It's where the best AI are going to be the ones that make the interface with the user seamless and exceptional. I think, for example, that you're better off for coding with something like Cursor, for those that are familiar with it, that augments the developer, than trying to have a tool that goes and code by itself and releases stuff all by itself with no human intervention. I think that's not going to happen. I think it's going to be more, maybe a Cursor is not the exact solution, but it's that augmentation. If I'm going to write a doc, I don't want the AI to go write the doc for me. I want to be able to instruct the AI and interact with it in a productive way so it modifies my document while I co-write it with the AI. I think it's no different in radiology. If anything, it's even truer in radiology. And it's what we've been doing for multiple years, even before the agentic, big buzzword. Our first product, which launched 5-6 years ago, Impressions, is an agent. It's actually an agent. And so having that human interactions where it's seamless, the radiologist just does their work and is augmented by AI, that allows them to be more productive. It allows them to see potentially, flaws in their thinking, or bounce ideas, or do repetitive tasks, faster. This is how the AI is going to evolve in radiology and elsewhere. This is my core belief, and what we are working towards as a company. I think it's our belief as a company and how we're positioning ourselves is to have the best human experience for augmented by AI.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think this idea of especially keeping the human in the loop in something as so innately, inherently humanistic as medicine is very important. And to your point, the aspects of creating products that can really augment to such a higher degree of productivity, I think is so important. J-O, thank you so much for your insights today. It's been so wonderful to speak with you about leadership and leading organizations, but also just getting your perspectives on the field and where this technology is heading. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.